Hello and welcome back to the RevOps Show. Many people are starting to get antsy and are unsure of what the future is going to look like. As we look to prepare for what lies ahead, Doug and Jess are getting into forecasting. Specifically, what people are doing wrong with it and what can help them get it right, or at least closer to right, because you'll never be 100% spot on. So with that, let's get into it.
It's time to get things started on the...
Jess!
I was waiting for it. Doug.
I gotta be careful. If I keep playing it, we might actually get a cease and desist order. Who Disney owns them now, don't they?
They do.
Oh, and you're like a Disney person. You'll get restricted from the park. You can get restricted from the park, Jess.
Oh, that better not happen. I would be so upset. I don't know what I would do with myself.
What would you do to me if something that you did here led
you know what? That might be the thing that caused me to quit.
Well, Jess, you're not allowed to quit. We've already.
That's what you keep saying.
No, you have committed to that.
I have.
Because you told me I'm not allowed to quit either.
You aren't allowed to quit.
Well, what? If I'm not allowed to quit, then you're not allowed to quit. I thought we had that. I thought we had that pact.
Fair.
What is? So I guess it's not a brotherhood pact. It's not a sisterhood pact. What is it?
Is it an imagine hood pact? I don't know. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, I don't know. Anybody out there that knows? Maybe your mom knows. I hear.
Maybe my mom does know. She's our number one fan.
Jess's mom. If you know the answer to that question, if you could let Jess know, she'll forget to tell me.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So what do we got going on, Jess? What's new in the world? What day is today?
Today is Friday.
But it's Friday 2 weeks from now, right?
Friday 2 weeks from now. Sure.
I was telling somebody about this. I remember I came in, it was a couple months ago, and it was Tuesday. I'm like, well, at least today's Friday, and I wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
And you were like, Doug, today's Tuesday. Or that's what I'm saying is like, so I realized that
today
Friday, but today can't be Friday from this week.
No.
This is like a Friday, like we're 3 weeks.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels like we've had a month this week.
This week has been a very long month. Well, and it's not been a bad month. It's just been a very.
It's been a long month.
Month.
Yeah. Yes.
This week has been a very intense month.
Yes.
I'll tell you, Jess. People are scared right now, and it's interesting.
Why do you say that?
Well, so it's reporting season on Wall Street.
Yes.
So everyone's coming. So I get, next time somebody asks me to, next time an analyst that asks me, I'm gonna tell them that I need swag. You know what? Bank of America, if you want me to brief you next time, send me some Bank of America swag. I want a Bank of America quarters it.
That's how to get you to do anything. Swag. Like
pretty much. That's
your ultimate goal anytime is to get swag.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I remember when I was at Merrill Lynch, money managers. And by the way, that was my first entree, not just into swag, but into quality swag. Like I'm talking, the upper end, back when Cutter Buck was a good brand, the upper end, like, nice golf shirts, etc. And I remember, and of course, when you start, I got to Merrill Lynch just as they were realizing that they needed to professionalize their new hires, etc. So I think it was like 13 months after I started, they totally changed what starting pay was, etc., so that they could attract higher caliber people in. So I was like, I took a huge pay cut from where I was to get started at Merrill Lynch. So, got a wife, got a kid. So, hey, I don't have to buy new shirts. They take you out, hey, you want to go out to Morton's? Yeah. Hey, I don't have to, I get a nice steak. I don't have to pay for it. And I remember I looked in my closet one morning and it was like, I had my suits from Merrill Lynch, and I think 80% of my other shirts had a money manager logo on it. I'm like, okay, something is wrong here. And I remember that weekend I got rid of everything. But I love me some swag. There's no question about that.
You do.
I was talking to a Bank of America analyst today, and they're moving now. I think it was the Bloomberg group of economists or Business Week or whatever, like 30 out of 30 are predicting recession next year. And, people are even beginning to talk about guaranteed recession. And I'm not saying there's not going to be a recession, but I did say, let's not forget that we have accurately predicted 12 of the last 3 recessions. And there's no question that there's a headwind. There's no question. So I'm just, people are, it's the FOMO game in a way that everyone's talking about the macro. Like I have said macroeconomic more in the last 10 days than maybe I've said in my entire life. And I pointed out to somebody, I said, when especially when you're talking to the growth side, maybe like the finance people, the operations people, I'm sure they're talking about macroeconomic conditions. I said, but when you're responsible for growth, you don't come in and go, well, what's the macro and economic environment? You just figure out what the hell do we have to do to grow. Anyways, so there's a lot of everyone. I'm seeing people moved and people are playing tight.
Yeah. People are paranoid.
And some of it is they're playing tight because they think it's tight.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so I had a conversation with somebody else probably a couple months ago. And I actually said, the problem is what we're really in is a Twitter recession, because everyone on Twitter is talking about a recession.
Oh, okay.
Everyone on Twitter and LinkedIn is talking about a recession.
Gotcha.
And so we're not really in a recession. And as a matter of fact, our numbers are still going up, but because everyone's talking about it, we've convinced ourselves of it.
That we're in a recession.
And by the way, I know we're getting closer to a recession because now all of the pontification is, well, we're just going to, convince ourselves into a recession, which, again, it's so funny just because this is I'm old. I turned 55.
I heard.
I don't know how I feel about that. Let's have a moment of silence for my before 55 days. I've seen this too many times, and it's just maybe because I was through 2 of them in financial services. Maybe that's why I notice things more.
Yeah.
But it's just so predictable how people react and the different thought leaders and the way they are, and what it's like, oh my gosh, really? Everyone thinks that they've got it's just, yeah. So anyways, I'm seeing people are people are nervous.
Yeah. Everybody says it's looking like 2008. That's what I keep hearing. Oh, okay. Wow.
You're hearing that it's looking like 2008?
That's what people are saying.
Who's saying that to you? Share your sources here. Expose them on this show.
I'm not going to share my sources here. It's probably because I graduated in 2008. So it's probably because of my age and I graduated college in 2008. I joined the workforce in 2008. So I think my group is hyper aware of that, and that's why people are saying that. I don't think it's accurate from the housing market standpoint, by the way. But anyway, we're down a rabbit hole that I don't want to get into.
Well, I know, but actually, I do want to say this because 2008 is the worst comparison that you can make. It's the worst comparison you can make. This is so not 2008. Maybe it's 2001.
Okay.
But it's really more 94.
See, you're going way before my time.
So the real difference here is well, one thing that is unique about where we are, and I think this will be a unique recession if we get into recession, is this will be the strongest job market recession.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I'm still struck by the fact that, we're talking about 3.5% unemployment and recession. There was a day, when I went to college and I took economics, 5% unemployment was considered full employment. It was supposed to be impossible to be under 5%. But the thing that is different, and why I think a lot of people are not prepared for this, is that for every recession that most people have been in business for, we have been in a still downward trending interest rate environment with money easing. Here, this is going to be, to some degree, and I don't want to get lost too much into it, this is going to be a central bank induced recession. because of inflation. Now, I do want to point this out because I think a lot of people lose sight of this, and I want to give some balance to it. And it matters to our conversation today. Whatever, I'm not even 100% sure what we're talking about, but
it matters.
So inflation's bad, right? And one of the things that's bad about inflation is when people believe that inflation is standard, then it's bad because you just always think everything's going to be more expensive, and it creates a lot of fear. The only thing worse than inflation, though, is deflation. Deflation is deadly. Great Depression was caused by deflation. Deflation is everything is worth less tomorrow. And so when we were coming into, as the pandemic hit, the major fear was deflation, right? We were like, everything that said what would cause a deflationary environment was in play there.
Right.
And so your go-to move when you're seeing deflation is you feed the economy, right? You just throw, which is what governments did, et cetera.
Yeah. Which
then it turned out not to be right. Then it turned out not to be as bad as we thought it was going to be. But what people forget is the whole point was the way you fight deflation is to create inflation. And the thing about inflation is we know what to do with inflation. You know what you do in an inflationary environment? You cause a recession. Right. And so it's kind of like, this is the play. This was the play we were running. Right now, the Fed missed it because, Jerome Powell was like, no. We overestimated. But it's like, wait a second. We knew this was coming. This was what was supposed to come. Oh my God. Wait, where did this come from? So I think it's why perspective matters, Jess. Perspective matters. That's my key thought for today. Perspective matters.
Perspective matters. Okay. Sweet.
What are we talking about now?
Not recession. Believe it or not.
Were these magic grits?
Wow. Great. Totally off the rails.
No, actually, if you think about it, everyone thought that stimulus was magic grits.
Okay.
See, I can make anything connect.
So you wanted to talk about forecasting. You had some thought on forecasting this week. Talk about what common mistakes are made. So tell me about that.
Well, where do you want to start, Jess?
At the beginning.
What questions
Doug.
do you have about forecasting?
Well, you said that it isn't the answer. So I'm curious about why is forecasting not the answer? Why do people think it is the answer?
Do you know what today is, Jess? Oh my gosh, I just remembered what today is in this conversation. I mean, I remembered it this morning, but I don't think I told you. Do you know what today is?
What is today?
Today is Dakota's birthday.
No, I did not know that it was Dakota's birthday.
Dakota, my great Pyrenees.
So we have
80-pound puppy.
And then we have two days later we have Doug. And then 2 days later 3 days later we have Doug. 2 days later we have Dakota. And then 3 days later we have Jess. All of our birthdays are right in a row.
Yep.
Look at that.
Dakota, my 80-pound Great Pyrenees puppy, is 1 year old today. And we had her for probably about 6 weeks. She'd gotten out a couple times, came more than a couple times, maybe a couple times a week. It was very difficult, increasingly difficult. Of course, she decided to run out when it was hot, humid, etc. And so meeting with our trainer, and I asked, what tips do you have, like when she gets out, to be able to help retrieve her faster.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, I got a lot of tips. The problem is none of them help after she gets out of the house. Right. And so the thing about forecasting is you're thinking, what does this have to do with forecasting?
I am.
The thing about forecasting is when people start going to forecasting, when people start saying, so what prompted this is I've gotten questions from the broader community, both from end customers, businesses that actually follow me in some way. I don't know why they do, Jess, but some do. Also some other agencies that sometimes think I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked about forecasting, and in every case, the situation that were brought up, forecasting was really not the issue. So when you're looking at when you're saying, well, I need forecasting, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be thinking about forecasting, you shouldn't have forecasting, but forecasting is not a solution to any real problem. And the only time forecasting is going to be really helpful is when you've got it in place before you need it. So if you want to figure out what do you do to manage, your dog getting out, you need to do the things before she gets out. It's the same thing. If you want forecasting to be valuable, then forecasting provides insight over longer terms. It's not something like when someone says, well, my biggest problem right now is forecasting. I go, oh, well, congratulations.
Why do you say that?
Because forecasting is an optimizing item. So it's like, that's awesome. So you're really looking to be able to optimize what's going on. So like, if you think about where we are, Jess, we've gotten better at forecasting, and we're continuing to work on forecasting because we're trying to we want to get a clearer signal to trigger our hiring, how serious. And if you think about it, I think we did an exceptional job, though we have seen the demand pick up a little bit faster than we anticipated. So I feel a little bit behind now, but we went on aggressive hiring, right? Without sacrificing.
Yep.
Right. But we didn't overhire.
No,
right.
We didn't.
So we picked up some of that signal right. And so that's that's an optimizing thing, right? So our the core aspects of our business were in really good shape, as good a shape as they've ever been in. And so so if forecasting is your problem, then you're in really good shape. One of the things, so I had somebody ask me for help on, they actually wanted to know if we would partner with them on something. So I said, well, tell me the situation. And it was like, they had 3 salespeople. Their average sale was 250,000, and the typical, they made 6 to 10 sales per year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And their frustration is they didn't feel like they had good forecasting. And my answer was, yeah, you don't. Right. You can't have good forecasting.
Yeah.
Right. We live in a world where our forecasting is only within a range for how good our forecasting can be, because we're in a 1s and 2s and 3s business, right? I mean, think about it. 2 or 3 accounts, plus or minus 2 or 3 accounts in a month for us is the difference between 2 very different. The only thing that plus or minus 2 or 3 has in common is they both get an oh shit. Right? They both create an oh shit moment.
Accurate.
Right? If we're plus 2 or 3, then it's like, oh shit. Right? If we're under 2 or 3, it's oh shit.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but 2 or 3 in a month, that's not like, there's a million things that are going to happen on that. And especially if you look at what our average sale price is.
Yep.
A week here, 2 weeks there, like all those things come about. They're, my favorite example of this is if I took a 1,000-gallon container, put it into the Atlantic Ocean, pulled water up, and there were no jellyfish, it would not be a safe assumption to say there are no jellyfish in the Atlantic.
Right. So, I mean, you hit on some of this a little bit, but so if we think about it as jobs to be done, right? What are we hiring forecasting for? Like, what are you actually using forecasting for? Where is it beneficial to you?
So,
I mean, you talked about it from a resource allocation standpoint because you brought up we hired. So,
when what you're always trying to do is to build predictability into your environment, and so I think forecasting is a form of predictability. There's 2 levels of forecasting. There is forecasting for resources, right? There's forecasting for managing the business. And the problem that people have in the approach that they take to forecasting is they're looking for precision. When in fact what forecasting does is provides range in even the best circumstances, right? And that's why, if your numbers are small, then your variance is going to be wide. And the difficulty is, until you get to a certain level of critical mass, your variance can be so wide that forecasting for resource management, just there's no point in doing that. right? Because the very, so we're going to be, at X plus or minus 90%. That's not very helpful.
No.
Okay.
It's not.
So here, what I would do is I would run scenario planning, right? I'd be looking and saying, okay, well, what happens if we're at here? What happens if we're at this tranche, or this tranche?
Okay.
Some people call that worst, expected, best. I'm actually thinking of something different. It's the same idea, but and then as I'm looking at it, by the way, the other thing that you've got to consider when you're talking about forecasting and you're thinking about that is over what period of time. So if you're like, we do not forecast on a monthly basis. I don't think in terms of months. I think in terms of quarters, right? I watch quarters. I watch trailing 90 days. I'm looking to be able to see, are we beginning to pick up a band there? And the thing that's interesting is whenever you look at your, when I look at inflection points that are oftentimes at the point that a company grows. Now, the problem is this is also at the point where a company shrinks, is you'll actually see a major increase in variance before it picks up. So you're 1 2 1 2 1 2 6 0 0 3 0 4 6 5 6 5 6 5 6 5, right? So that's a pattern where you've grown,
right?
But before you hit that next plateau, you actually go through this variance. And so if you begin to think about, from a resource standpoint, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? What are we doing up? Which is how we used to manage it, right? It's not really forecasting. Like I said, it's a little bit more scenario planning. So that, I don't want to be surprised by that, so that we can get into that if you have more questions. I'm sure you will. The other aspect of forecasting, which is actually what I think is the missed opportunity of forecasting. What we want to do with forecasting is we want to build predictability. Why do we want predictability? Well, we want predictability because we want to allocate our limited resources better. And in sales, our limited resources are our people, our time, and our effort. So we ask people to, and this is what drives me crazy. It's the aspect actually. HubSpot's no worse than, but they really built out their forecasting model based on. So there's a forecasting, kind of a pre-built automated forecasting ability to do in HubSpot, which is great if you want to do the typical approach to forecasting, right? It's awesome for that. It takes a lot of friction out of it. The problem is I hate the traditional approach to forecasting. We ask you to commit, what are your commits? What's your this? What's your this? The reality is you never close the loop on the forecast, or you're asking people, when you're asking them for commits, the only loop you close is when you overestimate. So if I put these accounts at commit and they don't close, then I have to answer to that.
Right.
And by the way, here's the other thing that I noticed. I'm going to ask you a quick question. When do people complain about forecasting? When do people say that forecasting is a problem?
When they're not closing the amount of business they want to close. Yeah.
How often does someone come in and say, so remember when I said that if forecasting is your problem, I say congratulations?
Yeah.
The legitimate reason to look at forecasting is we need to get better at forecasting because we're struggling to keep up. We are so overplanned, and that's causing, that's going to cause a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I would say that that's about 2% of the people who put forecasting on the top of their pain list. So the reality is the only thing, what they're really saying is they've got a sales problem, right? They've got a new business problem, a revenue problem, whatever you want to say here. And so what we ask you to do is we ask you to commit. We build in an aspect because we never fully close the loop. We don't get better at predicting. We're not teaching salespeople how to look and how to think better. By the way, if I want to forecast, if I want to get better at predicting, I want to get, the reason that that's helpful is I can get better at interventions. So if you tell me this is going to close, and that's a fact, then okay, that's great. Nice to know. This is not going to close. Okay, great. My question is, well, what do I do about it? Okay, this is going to close, but what would prevent it, right? How do I prevent it from not closing?
Right.
And so we come in, and I'm seeing some companies do this right now. They are so, macroeconomic environment. By the way, forecasting becomes a thing. People are getting scared when they're talking about forecasting.
Why do you say that?
It's like when reporting becomes important. We need to fix our reporting.
It makes you feel a sense of comfort and certainty.
Well, no. So the reality is, your forecast tells you you're going to miss. You're 50% below where you need to be, and so you say there's something wrong with our forecasting because I can't be 50% below where I need to be. It's like,
okay.
hey, I'm sorry. That's where you are.
Right.
And by the way, so you end up putting more and more pressure. I see this all the time.
Right.
We're seeing forecasting frequency, pipeline reviews. What's this? What can you move to commit? Move that to commit. And it creates this artificial pressure. It creates, we put a timing element on it. In essence, like the difference between buying a stock and buying an option is, if you're right buying a stock, you can wait a long time to be right. But if you're buying an option, the danger of buying an option is you might be right, but if your timing's not right, then you lose. And so we start building, like I see this happening in sales motions. We see it with our clients that salespeople are all of a sudden putting the pressure on, and they're trying to, it's the sales created urgency. And of course, they're coming off of this period where they thought they'd gotten so professional because, buyers, but we get that, right? Because we had a tailwind. And so what I'm saying is, what forecasting should be is you're placing a bet. From a salesperson perspective, what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to place bets.
To say whether I'm going to close this deal or not. And I'm betting on this deal. I'm not betting on that deal.
Well, but the bet is what are the odds?
Okay.
Right. What odds are you going to give it?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So here's my question. Where do you spend your time? I've got a $300,000 opportunity. Let's assume that for purposes of this, deal size is bigger to the deal, the better. That's rarely true always. Like there's lots of things that come into this, but for purposes just to keep it simple,
bigger deal is better.
Okay. I've got a $300,000 opportunity. I got a 1 in 10 chance of winning it.
Okay.
I've got a $20,000 opportunity. Well, let me change. I've got a $50,000 opportunity. I got a 45% chance. I've got a 40% chance.
You spend more time on the $50,000 opportunity because there's more chance.
Which one's worth more?
Okay. So yeah, you're right. $300,000 opportunity.
Which one do you spend time on? You know what? And the reality is, it really depends upon the situation.
Yeah.
Now, all things being equal, $300,000 opportunity with a 10%.
Yeah. All things being equal, you would spend more time on the. Yeah.
Now, here's what I notice. When I put a 10% probability on something, in my experience, I should probably do a regression analysis on this. In my experience, people close more than 10% of their 10% opportunities.
Okay. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Because I think the 10% opportunity it's not based on anything really. And I'll come back to another point. I think they close less than 80% of their 80% probabilities.
Okay.
So you've seen pipelines, Jess. You've seen the 20, 50.
I actually was have a question for you because I don't know that we've ever talked about this, like how you feel about the probability being explicitly tied to the deal stage. Like
stage-based probability is bullshit.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Stage-based probability is abject bullshit. And by the way, here's how we know this, right? I have a blog post on this. Go to our blog, look, type in forecasting, you'll find it. We all have this. I have deals in our last stage.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, it's a flyer. It's a flyer.
Sorry, I'm not, it's a flyer. What does that mean?
It's a long shot.
Okay.
It's a long shot, right? I've got opportunities that are early. I've got opportunities that are in our pre-sales pipeline. I'm like, this is, right. So I can point to 2 opportunities easily in our pre-sales pipeline. So they're not even in our percentages of pipeline, right? That have a higher probability of winning than an opportunity that we have in our last stage.
So why do you think that's so common?
Why is what so common?
Tying probability to deal stage based probability.
Because that's how Salesforce built their CRM.
And so everybody's just, it's habit.
That's how we got it's what we did. It's a little bit of a very simple human mistake of we confuse, the closer you are. I mean, somebody out there is going, why the hell do you have a opportunity in the last stage that's got a lower probability than an opportunity in an earlier stage?
Yeah.
My answer would be, should I have kicked them out? Right. And now here's the thing. I haven't spent huge effort on it.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, we had an opportunity. I don't think I ever put the chance of winning it above 30%. It was a roughly $250,000 opportunity. We lost it.
Yep.
I put in real time in trying to win it.
Yeah.
I put in real time, I put in real time trying to win it. I treated it, through the process. I viewed it through the lens, probably in the neighborhood of it was worth 35 to 70,000.
Right.
So I'm going to treat it like, I gave it the same treatment as I gave it a $75,000 opportunity that I felt really confident of. You know what? I lost that one. So I think that there's, the probability is really more criteria based than it is stage based. We added a property to our pipeline. So we not only have forecast confidence, which I'll come back to, but we also have deal effort.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. And so here's one of the things that we do that's fundamentally different. And I know we did talk about this in an earlier episode. Our audience has grown so much that I'm sure most of them have not gone back and listened to this. But, if I commit to this account and I lose it, I'll get called to the carpet on it.
Right. Yep.
But when I have this account and I'm like, well, there's a 15% chance and it closes from out of the blue. Celebrate.
Yeah.
Not only do we not, is there no consequence? We celebrate it.
Right.
Right. And by the way, when we really look at our forecasting, because the reason that we're really looking at our forecasting is we're trying to make up a shortfall, we don't really care about the accuracy. We care about the number.
Right.
So if I lose $100,000 that I thought I was going to win, but I win $100,000 that I thought I was going to lose, we go, see, I forecasted it correctly.
Is that so you brought up earlier that we don't close the loop on the forecast. Is that what you're talking about when you say we don't close the loop on the forecast? Like we don't look at, we forecasted this at 15% and revisit that back. Why did we close that one? Why did we have it forecasted at 15% and then we won it? Why did we have this one at 80 and we didn't win it? We don't have those types of conversations.
Yeah. And what I would say too, and the problem with stage-based forecasting is also that there's no involvement in forecasting.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
There's no involvement in me saying, okay, I'm calling this probability. Right. And so what I want to look at too is how frequently is someone changing that probability.
So do you not like stage-based probability, even if it's a transactional sale? Like if it's a transactional type sale, is that a place where stage-based probability makes sense?
Not really.
Okay.
How many people go back and check? I mean, whatever you do probability wise, if you're doing any type of forecasting, if you're not on some regular basis checking, well, we allocated a 70% chance to this. For every 10 deals that got here, did we win 7?
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I'll tell you: we underestimate our low probabilities. We overestimate our large probabilities. And like you come into the pipeline at 10%, right?
Yeah.
In 90% of sales processes that I've seen, if you're in the pipeline, there's a better than 10% chance, because the fact that you had a bona fide conversation with the salesperson about something says more than 10% of those should probably buy, or there's a different problem.
You're assuming that every single first stage is a bona fide health conversation. I just want to.
Well. So what? So
that's
here's
not
the problem.
That's not the first stage for a lot of people.
if you're selling thousands and thousands of transactions,
Hmm.
then for purposes of resource planning, averages are okay.
Okay.
But you know what's wrong with, another descriptor for averages, always incorrect, right? Because if I'm average, so if I've got some high, some low, so I take the average, that means I'm under allocating some, I'm over allocating others. I'm wrong on everything. It's just the wrongness balances out.
I've never thought of it that way.
But that's what average is, right? That's why, if you get into psychological research and things like that, you find, one of the things that's happening in behavioral science right now is that so much historical research is based on averages. So when you start studying aspects about the brain and what we think is normal behavior, abnormal behavior, it's all based on average, except when you try to find how many brains actually fit the descriptor of what is considered to be the normal brain, you know what you find out? None of them do. It's not how brains work. And so everybody is abnormal.
Yeah. Well, that's
right?
accurate.
Which means we take the wrong play at the wrong time in the wrong situation with the wrong person. And then we go, I don't understand why is life getting harder? Right? So the biggest value of forecasting is predictability. How are you allocating your energy and your effort? Right? We need, see, here's the thing about, and I love poker, and I love baseball. And you know why? Because there's a immediate feedback system.
Yeah.
There's an immediate feedback system. And so and there's a consequence.
Right.
So actually, I was explaining resulting to somebody and they misunderstood the term resulting. They said the problem, it was something about the scoreboard, and make sure that you don't, your scoreboard shouldn't be results. I'm like, no, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. It's, resulting is always a danger. And it's like, if I just have a good at bat, if I have a good swing and I never get a base hit, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. But there's an immediate feedback loop. You can break it down. You can look at inputs. You can look at outputs. There's a forced learning.
Right.
Same thing in poker. And by the way, when you look in poker, one of my favorite stories as I was understanding the strategy behind poker was someone who had learned to play the game professionally, who realized that, their coach said, the problem here is that you're in the money too much. And she said, well, I thought winning was the point of the game. And he said, well, the problem is if you break down because you're winning so frequently, take a look at how much you're winning. And by the way, professional poker players, they calculate dollars per, they know what their hourly rate is. Right? They calculate their winnings per dollar spent playing the game, right? Which is probably a smart thing to do. And so the difficulty is because you're coming in the money, you're playing too conservatively, right? You're coming on the low ends. To make a living playing poker, you got to win the big money.
Right.
To win the big money, there are times where you have to play longer bets. You have to put things at risk. There's a point where you have to go all in.
Yeah.
Right. And so learning how to balance those two things out in a game that is always variable, that will never be 100% predictable. Right? You're forced to learn those elements. So you're always thinking in odds. So you know what the term thinking in bets maybe should be thinking in odds. But the bet is, where's that confidence level? What is that confidence level?
Right.
How can we learn to spend more time on the better things, less time on the worst things, right? And by the way, you know what? It's okay if you're consistent. I've learned that, there are some people, they will consistently run a little bit lower, but there's a consistent, so they tend to be a little bit more conservative. And I know, okay, I kind of run a mental calculation of I put them up 1 degree, somebody else I take down 1 degree.
Sure.
But that loop, the value of forecasting is where's the forecast? What's the measurement? Tying it back to the forecast. What's the hypothesis that led to that, and getting into that virtual element? And then also understanding that the variance, understand your variances, right? I know that when we're good, we're plus on a quarterly basis right now. I would say we're plus minus 50%, maybe getting towards, we might get to plus minus 25%. I think if we ever get to plus minus 20, which is a pretty big ass range.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that mean? It means, okay, if I'm coming in one quarter and I'm saying, okay, I think we're going to do a 500,000 this quarter, just picking a number. That means, you know what, that 500,000 I could do, you know, this forecast is right if we do 250. It's right if we do 750.
Right.
Right. Well, I want to be careful that if I make, you know, if I over allocate to 750, what happens if I do 250? Now, if I play to my downside of 250, then like, you know, then I might, and we come into 750, that might cause a different problem. And so if I play to the downside, that's going to restrain potentially my upside.
Right.
Yep. And so I have to think in terms of those bads.
Sure.
But that's what forecasting is. Forecasting is not, well, we said we were going to, I mean, I used to do it all the time. All you have to do is bring in 2 deals a month. All you have to do is bring in 2 deals a month, right? What 2 deals a month means, 3 months of the year, I'll bring in 8.
And then I can take the rest of the year off.
Well, no, it's not. No, I have to work all 12 months to be able to bring in 8 in 3 different months. Here's what it is. It's 1 1 0 0 0 10. Like
you're right.
Right. You've heard my analogy. It's the quarters carnival game.
Yeah.
It's that thing where it's pushing the quarters, quarter in, and then a whole bunch of quarters come.
And then all of a sudden you get all the quarters. Yep.
Right. And so we build this whole forecast that says smooth, right? And so what is 2 per month? That's the average. Mm-hmm. Right. You know what? You know what 2 per month is? Wrong every month. As a matter of fact,
always inaccurate.
Right. I look back over our last 4 years, Jess. I ran the numbers of each year. What was our average win per month? And less than 10% of the months did we bring in the average. By the way, take a look at saving money, building wealth. What's the average return of the stock market?
Yeah.
Then everyone runs their numbers on that return every year, but you never get that return every year.
Right.
Which is why you retire confidently and end up being a greeter at Walmart. No offense to people who are greeting at Walmart because they want to have connection with people in the world. That I don't mean any offense to anybody who's greeting at Walmart. I only mean that people are greeting at Walmart because they have to. Because their advisor did straight math. And by the way, here's the other thing. If you blow away a quarter, it's funny. I'm telling everybody, we had a great third quarter. And especially year over year. We had our best third quarter ever.
Yep.
And before that, our best quarter ever was fourth quarter last year.
Yep.
And our fourth quarter last year was our best quarter ever by a
lot.
By a lot, right?
Yeah.
I was explaining, I do not expect to beat our fourth quarter last year. They're like, oh, really? I thought you said things were good. I'm like, yeah, they're good. We just blew out our fourth quarter this quarter, right? This past quarter.
Yep.
Of course we're not going to blow that out, right? The only way you're going to blow that out is because you've sandbagged something, which, far too often public companies do. And we've kind of fallen into this path that we think forecasting is the equivalent of companies reporting earnings to Wall Street.
What was that you just said?
What?
Repeat that again, what you just said.
We think of forecasting too much as the idea of what it looks like when companies are reporting to Wall Street.
Okay, gotcha.
They beat their number, they met their number, the number is always going up. Well, as most people will tell you, there's a lot of manufacturing going on to make it look that way. Who is the greatest investor of all time?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, right? Do you know what Warren Buffett looks for?
No.
He looks for companies with chunky revenue and chunky profits. What's another word for chunky? Highly variant. And the reason is, he says, we hold these companies for a long time. What we care about is how much money do we make?
Yeah.
We don't care if it all comes, we don't care if the money, like we want to make $10 billion. If that $10 billion comes in, if we make $20 billion in year one and we lose, or if we lose $1 billion for 9 years and then we make $19 billion.
Yeah.
We made $10 billion. And here's what we know. We can get that for a whole lot less than these companies that look like everything's super consistent, et cetera.
Right.
Chunky's good. Yep. Anybody that's had peanut butter knows that chunky is good. Don't at me.
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to start a debate about chunky versus creamy peanut butter on here. You wanted to circle back on forecast confidence, so I wanted to ask you what you wanted to talk about there.
Yeah, so what we ask people to do, we keep it pretty simple. What we ask people to do, and I do it myself, is we have a forecast confidence property, 1 to 5. So it's is it hopeful, possible, probable, likely, definite. And hopeful is 5%, possible is 30%, probable is 50%, likely is 67%, definite is 95%. And I update that from time to time. By the way, one of the things I used to do, one of the things I realized is I used to go 4 to 1 to 3 to 2 to 5 to, right? And I realized that actually one of the problems in sales is there's so much noise because there's so much emotionality. Yeah. I'd have a bad call with somebody or the call wouldn't go as well. And I'd be like, oh shit, yeah, and by the way, and it's like, okay, wait, this just went down to a 2. I'm looking at the value of the opportunity. It's a $200,000 opportunity. I'm looking at the effort that I put into it, and now I'm like, well, okay, you know what? Because by the way, at the end, you win it or you lose it.
Yeah.
Right. You know what they call second place, don't you? First lost.
Yeah.
As the business philosopher Ricky Bobby likes to say, if you're not first, you're last.
First, you're last.
Right. And so the difficulty in the game of probabilities is again, you can come out, but in the end, it's 0 or 1. You get the money or you don't get the money.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, well, you know what? Let's discount this.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up about the emotionality to it and the forecast confidence, because you and I have debriefed on some of those where you've either been moving the forecast confidence or like I think to take some of that out of it. Like you and I will talk about those conversations or those opportunities.
And that's why what you also want to do is you want to track those confidence metrics to what's the criteria. Right. If you're playing poker, there's elements of what you're seeing on the table, what your position in the betting, who's left, what's their stack look like, how many, like there's all these things that you're tying your confidence to. And so one of the things, and you remember, because we won a piece of business where we stayed firm right after it looked like, and it was, wait a second, what has actually changed?
Right.
Nothing has actually changed. Right. And so we're playing a hand of poker. And I'll tell you, you know what you call somebody who plays poker and their emotions are driving them? Do you know what it's referred to?
No.
You need to watch Running Molly. Oh my gosh.
I have watched it, and it's not called Running Molly. People are gonna Molly's Game. Molly's Game.
There you go, Molly's Game. You got to watch Molly's Game.
I don't remember what they called it in the movie.
And then you have to watch. Oh my God, I'm going blank on the one with Ed Norton and Matt Damon.
Rounders.
Rounders. There you go, Rounders. It's called. He's on tilt. He's playing on tilt. She's playing on tilt.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're on tilt.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I hate to say this. Most salespeople, and today, what I'm seeing right now, they're on tilt. Everyone's running on tilt, right? And so what's happening? We're pushing harder at the wrong time. We're creating more friction with the buyer, and the reality is nothing has really changed. And by the way, here's the other thing. It gets to negotiation. What's the alternative, right? If they don't do this, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we're playing to justify when reality, what we should be doing is we should be re-exposing what's the alternative.
Yep.
And here's what I've learned. Helping people understand the alternative costs you less than overreacting.
Imagine that. All right, I got a couple of key takeaways. You have to start forecasting before you need your forecast. So start doing that early. The forecast doesn't provide precision, it provides a range, which I think you're spot on. That's a place where everybody expects it to be this precise number. And then closing the loop, the step that frequently gets missed, but key when you're looking at your forecast and kind of debriefing on your forecast.
There you go. You got it.
All right. This was fun.
All right, Jess. Well, I don't even know what to. I don't even.
Happy birthday to Dakota.
There we go. Happy birthday, Dakota. Happy birthday, and Jess, because we won't have another RevOps show.
We won't.
Before this.
I'll be a year older the next time we have our RevOps show.
Happy birthday to you. What is this? 27?
You will go with that. 27. Sure.
Until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. If forecasting is the only thing you're worried about or having issues with, then you must be lucky. Remember, it's important to brief on the wins and the losses, especially if they were unexpected. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, and share the episode. If you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about forecasting or anything else RevOps related, email me at hannah@imaginellc.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. Until next time, remember, you can't solve your upstream problems downstream.